welcome to this very special panel today we're doing for Hairouna Film Festival 2022 with Simmons and the Grenadines. We are so lucky to have some really accomplished filmmakers with us today and producers. I'm really honored to be able to speak to you guys today. It's really looking forward to it. Today's panel is titled Film Business Development and Distribution for the Caribbean. And one of the things we're going to focus on is you know, sort of the transitions through the industry, through the film sector over the last few decades, and tips and things that you guys have sort of learned over the years, and any kind of advice that you would have for a lot of coming up in the sector. So what I wanted to do a little bit today, so I'm gonna just do a little brief introduction and then hand it over to you guys to do more in-depth introduction. So we're joined by Riv Simmons, who is a Bayesian producer with over, 30 years in the industry experience. And also we're joined by Howard and Mitzi Allen from HAMA Films, which actually stands for Howard and Mitzi Allen, from Antigua and Barbados, also with a similar about 30 years experience in the industry. So it's really fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to learning a lot from both of you. So yeah, we can jump in. Riv, I don't know if you want to get us started. Just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into this crazy world of film.
Well, first of all, I'm not Bayesian alone. I'm Vinci as well.
Oh,
and
what? I didn't even know that.
My mother's Vinci. Yeah. So I have a passport and everything. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, you're gonna be probably hearing a lot from us. You're gonna regret telling me that.
Now, I got into business a strange way. My sister was a filmmaker in the UK, covered all the riots. She used to work with Menelik Shabazz, a UK British filmmaker. She did a lot of products in the UK. I grew up around the industry, came to Barbados when I was young, had an interview at the TV station. I was able to answer all the questions. I suck up information, I'm a sponge. And I was able to answer everything. Got the job started out at CBC many years ago. And I'm one of these people that believe you can't stay in one place too long. You know, you have to grow. So every 2 years, I like to evolve and do different things. So currently, president of the Barbados Film and Video Association. I own 50% of a TV station in Africa, the only free-to-air sports channel in Africa. Shows, I license shows. I have a show right now going on in about 13 countries. I'm on episode number 84, produce that weekly. And for years I've been just, all sorts, TV, film, I trained at Ryerson, some short courses in film. So I used to work with a lot of Canadians and US companies coming into Barbados to shoot. So I worked at high-end film production side, but I also work television side. So I also work with cricket productions and things like that. Anything around the region, pretty much ESPN, whoever, I freelance for whoever. So I'm diverse, I license, I do more producing now than anything else. I dislike working for people as such. I like to work on my own products now. I'm at that stage where I don't want to sit down and do your project. I want to be creative and put a team together and work on projects. So that's what I've concentrated on for the last probably 3-4 years. And that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you.
I can identify with the not wanting to focus on your own thing. You know, that's so important. Howard and I am a broadcast journalist, and I worked as one in Toronto, Canada for many years before relocating to Antigua. And I came to Antigua with a solid background in television. I was a television reporter. And I met Howard, who had a solid background in television, working for the Super Channel, it was called here. And
a cable company.
Yeah. And so he was not only, as I realized later, not only an editor and a cameraman, he was a trained engineer, which fast forward much later in our careers became vital to the two of us being able to do many of the things that we have accomplished over the years. So I came into filmmaking with the reporting sensibility, how to tell a story in the shortest time as possible. And Howard, he will tell you, has always had an interest in filmmaking and storytelling. So from my end, I was in Toronto. I was involved in theater. I loved it. I loved the creative industries. But as we evolved in this, I became the producer and the person who ensured that we kept the lights on while we did all the things that we were doing. And so it's now been 30 years in film and television. We have produced 5 feature films. The first one we did was 20 years ago, 22 years ago, called The Sweetest Mango, which was a romantic comedy. And it was based on how Howard and I met and fell in love. And when we did the film at the time, we didn't realize that it was actually the first indigenous feature film for the Eastern Caribbean. So which was quite an accomplishment for us and for this community, which spurred an interest in telling more stories. And we have done, apart from doing our independent productions, we do workshops, we train, we have an internship program, and we just continue to do what we do. And what helped to finance our films was HAMA Productions, where we did and have produced a number of documentaries, TV series. We've done a drama series called Paradise View, which was distributed across the region, and Pet Playhouse, funded by an international organization that dealt with animal welfare. So that's how we were able to fuel our film passion. But Howard is the storyteller. Howard is the one that always wanted to make movies. So I'll let you tell him about where that came from.
Yes, so I grew up in a family of creative people. So the idea of storytelling was always a part of me. And I was always fascinated by films and wanted to make films of my own. But back then it would have been way too expensive. The whole process was expensive and cumbersome. And so it was the advent of digital video that made it practical and possible for us to actually do it. And with the turning from 1999 to 2000 and all the excitement about, Y2K and all of that, I thought that would have been a perfect time to use the making of a feature film as a way to kind of mark Antigua's jump into this new century, sort of this millennium. And so we started with telling a story about ourselves, because we guess that would be easy. And that's how The Sweetest Mango came about, right? Mitzi had found a journal where she had a note about me giving her a mango as a gift when I first met her. And so we took that and built a story around that. And that became the screenplay for The Sweetest Mango. And it turned out to be a really huge success. Partly because at the time that it was released, the one local cinema we had was closed for renovations. And so we really had a captive audience, and we had done a lot of very strategic marketing and advertising to get the word out about the film. And so it did extremely well. It ran from like February to August?
August, yeah.
Right. It ran for almost 6 months. It just kept going and going and going and going. And what we would do is, as we would notice that the numbers were dwindling, we would then drop the price a little bit. So it went from like $20 originally to 15 to 10 to 5. And so it just kept going and going and going. And it, like I said, it was a really huge success, and is actually still the most successful film in Antigua. This is being up against, the Hollywood, Titanic.
The longest, what we were told by the cinema owner, it was the longest running feature film in Antigua and Barbuda. And at the time our film came out, we were up against the Titanic, and that was the big movie of the day. And close to when it was just about petering out, we were up against the Fast and the Furious, And so what that told us, the information we received from that is, we want to see ourselves. As much as Antiguans and Barbudans enjoyed those Hollywood films, they really liked seeing our movies about us. And so here in Antigua and Barbuda, if you have seen The Sweetest Mango once, you've seen it at least 5 times. And that's why it kept running. Yeah, seriously. And now it has a life, and we'll get into distribution. Now it has a life online, and people are still requesting it. And it's in university libraries. It's archived at the Toronto International Film Festival Reference Library. And so it has another life beyond us. And and we've gone on to do more because of that, because now people are confident that, this is possible in the Eastern Caribbean, we'll support it. But it has informed us as storytellers not to shy away from being authentically who we are, because there is absolutely a market for it.
100%. I think that's actually, like, it's so great that you came around to that point at the end, because what I was going to ask is how do we kind of measure the value and the impact of these things that we're doing? And I guess what I'd like to say is, what I'd like to ask you guys is, in your experience, how has the response been to this work, and how do you view the value of Caribbean people making films and Caribbean people telling their stories? Because this is the reason why we started this festival, because we believe that representation is important, and that especially in a post-colonial context in the Caribbean, reclaiming narrative is really powerful. It's a really powerful thing, and then doing that through cinema is especially powerful. So why do you think it's important for us to develop the sector in the Caribbean? What benefits?
Well, first of all, we need to tell our own stories. If we don't, someone else will tell our stories for us, and we won't always like their interpretation of who we are. Right. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, we need to understand that there is a need. Like, people really do want to see themselves on the screen, but we are competing with a huge industry called Hollywood that provides a different type of content, right? And you're kind of forced to compete with that, even with your meager resources, right? And sometimes the way we tell the stories, our style of storytelling may not match what Hollywood is doing. And so you kind of have to educate your audience at the same time and get them to appreciate different storytelling styles. Right?
Absolutely.
That can be a challenge. But like I said, there is definitely a need, and our markets are underserved. Right? No one is actually producing regular films for the Caribbean market. Like when was the last time a film was released in St. Vincent that was made by a Vincentian and that was distributed across St. Vincent or across the region? Right?
So, well,
right. But we also know that films are costly to make. And so part of our challenge too is being creative, not just with the storytelling, but with the entire production like how do you funding, how do you, how do you source your cast and your crew? We have to be creative on a whole lot of different levels to make it work as an industry.
Riv, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, it's content in a whole. I mean, anything produced locally, there's viewership for it. Once it's, I mean, we have a habit in the Caribbean of producing a lot of talking heads, interview type shows, because they're easy.
Easy, right.
The day you do a drama, you do something outside the box, a reality show or something, you have so much viewership. I started in 2006. I did a show called Runboat, a local show. You receive clues to your BlackBerry and you're running around like crazy. We got over 100,000 in sponsorship. And when we went into CBC the first time, I would never forget it. They said, no one wants to sponsor local programming. That's because they just see talking heads all the time. The day you come with something different, you're swamped. People were all over us. To this day, people are still asking back for that show. Anytime you produce local content, I remember doing game shows. I've done a ton of different shows, and there is always that need for local content. We just have to find ways of doing it. We have to build that network regionally so the distribution is easier.
Right.
So we create systems that each time that someone goes to a country, they're not having to negotiate fresh. There's a system in place. We have to create these systems. Recently, the BFA, Barbados Film and Video Association, we got agreement with CBC, and there's a whole lot of nice things in there. We don't pay for airtime. 50% ads are ours. We get 40%, if we bring a commercial something, we get 40% the rate. There's a ton of incentives. Every month we get 20 minutes of advertising time on the TV station so we can advertise Film Association members stuff, if they're casting, if they're whatever else. We have to create systems around the region so each time someone goes in there fresh, they're not knocking on the door and trying to negotiate fresh. Template. We have to come together.
Yes, I agree with that. And we have had to do it all alone, making these inroads ourselves. We've made deals with Caravision, we've made deals with the CBC. Our series Paradise View has shown in Barbados, and our films too have shown. But we are going in as individuals doing this, and we need more. I think distribution networks who will do that legwork for us. Fortunately, we have some of that savvy, but if you have a young filmmaker that just wants to do his movie and get it out there, you're asking them to do so much on their own. So much on their own. And so I absolutely agree with Rev. We have to start to develop those systems. And that's where the jumping off point for this conversation, really. The time is now. We know we have unique stories to tell, but I find the business community as a whole, and governments too, are still hanging on to the hundreds of years, over 100 years of indoctrination into Hollywood and US and European content. And we have to change their mind, because their idea of a film industry is if a big production company
Hollywood comes into the Caribbean. They're not thinking of our content going out. No one paid me any interest with what I had within the region, but I went UK and then went Africa, and it was due to technology and things we would develop, we created a network, and we're working across TV stations in Africa. And no one's thinking that. Everyone's thinking film industry is Hollywood. No, it's not. There's other places we can go with our content, and we're not thinking that way. We have to start thinking and putting systems in place.
Yes.
And there are networks we can tap in. This is the easiest time in history for distribution. Because you can move things wherever, Film Hub, this, that, whatever. There's a ton of places you can put your content to get it out there now. We have to come together, create systems, and move our content.
Well, one of the things I would just like to add here, and it's education, it's exposure, because there are a lot of, for some people, when they think movies, they only think one way. And part of one of the initiatives that we have been involved in for over 10 years was the Cuban Film Institute had the Traveling Caribbean Film Showcase, where they showed Caribbean films for free in the different territories, just so that we can see ourselves and see what other filmmakers are doing. And if we continue to share our work in that way, it's creating a cinematic culture, a culture of cinema, which is uniquely ours. And that's where it starts. We have to start showing our movies and seeing our movies. And I think in the early days when filmmakers started to make movies, they started to hold on to them, waiting for that big Hollywood break where they're going to be seen and where they're going to get all the money that they put into this thing back. But you know what? Nobody's gonna see it, and you're not gonna get the break if nobody sees it. And I have to, and it's all of that. So all of that is a part of the education. So, and understanding, asking yourself honestly as a filmmaker, why am I doing this? Why am do I want to tell a story? Do I have something to say? Do I want to become rich and famous? Do I just want to share my art? You have to evaluate your reasons, because there are so many times have changed, so many different ways in which to get the work out there. But we have to educate people first, reorganize in our own environments. All these countries need to have film commissions that look at ways to give seed money to young filmmakers, so that we've had young people who have worked with us, who have gone on to study film. They're not in Antigua anymore, and they're all doing extremely well, and they're very successful. Why? Because after their parents have made that investment, reluctantly, I might add, they can't come back to the Eastern Caribbean, let alone Antigua, to do what? So we need to put infrastructure in place, training for people who want to do it, networking for those who are already in it and need to get their work across the region and beyond. And the whole education about why films don't get as far as they could. Good Caribbean films, excellent Caribbean films that don't go as far. And it is because we don't know how. We don't know how to move the product beyond our shores to the Caribbean diaspora and all of that.
Well, in most cases, it's the artists trying to do all of that stuff themselves.
It's a one person trying to do everything, where they're the director, producer, distributor, everything.
Yeah,
We have to break that mold.
Right, right. It's just too much.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. I was gonna ask Rev if he believes that a part of what we have to do is to establish, because Howard and I have been talking about this, that we need, instead of each island having a film commission, that we have a Caribbean film commission. That's number one, right? I know, all right? But for
you ready to create a war.
Right? That's number one. And because we're talking about education and pooling our resources, and that is, to me, one of the ways in which things can happen, because we are, when we take it's cheaper for us to go to the United States or Canada and tour with our film than it is for us to do it in the Eastern Caribbean. And we've done it, right? Because it's one landmass, you can get it done, and it's, here we're island hopping and we're going into new territory and starting all over again. But I believe if there was a film commission.
Maybe let's not call it a film commission. I'm going to tell you why you don't call it a film commission. Because the film commission's role in most of the Caribbean countries is to attract that big North American film into our territory, and not about the development of local cinema. No. So we may have to change that name and look at it, because if you have one film commission across the region, everyone's fighting for that movie that's coming down. We want something to develop us within the Caribbean together to move forward.
Right, okay.
Yeah. But the politicians are definitely not interested in indigenous film industry.
And they don't understand the numbers on it. They don't understand, because Nigeria and those countries started with VHS, little cameras, and putting together very low inexperience and selling them
the chunks of
very small CDs, and they made, until they've started doing huge productions with Ari Reds, whatever kind of camera, but they started very small, and it grew the industry. How they don't work in a structured film with rules and everyone else. It's smaller crews, everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
But part of their success too was because there's this one big landmass, right?
Exactly.
Part of
Numbers.
We've actually tried to go from island to island, but it's just too costly.
It's hard. It's a numbers game. Nigeria, you're talking 200 million?
Also, the different governments are not friendly to.
No. No.
They treat you really like a foreigner, right? So every country you go to, you're not always welcomed with open arms, right? So you're like duplicating your efforts. Every time you go to another island, right? You have to start the whole marketing machinery rolling from scratch every time. It's very costly.
But just going back to the question of response, I'd like to just say this: the response is overwhelming when it happens.
Yeah.
And that has been what has kept us going, because we can see the need and the response is there. So there's a tremendous response to the work when it's done. And I think filmmakers who want to do it should know that an audience is there waiting for them. It's just that the structure is not there for everything, but we just have to keep pushing because the structure will come.
Yeah, well, our approach has always been that our home market is our primary market, and we have to saturate that market before we move to the next. You know, before we expand, let's say, to the wider Caribbean, and then we expand from that to the Caribbean diaspora.
Right.
And what we found is there's even more excitement among people in the diaspora because they have a lot of nostalgia and stuff about their home.
Absolutely.
So when we take our film to, let's say, Canada or New York, you know, across the US, I mean, we get tremendous response, right? And sometimes it's their excitement that spills back home.
Yeah, because they're also negotiating what, you know, their own sense of identity from the diaspora, which is like an ongoing process for anybody who's living outside, or for any of us who've lived abroad and come back. And, you know, so these films really, I think they're kind of a way to connect and to kind of like reify that sense of home while being abroad.
Yeah.
Let me give you an example of a system. So many years ago, Marcia Weeks did her first movie, Hush. And Barbados would have probably paid her some money for it. And the second year, she says, Rib, they don't have any more money. I said, I have an idea for a system we can use. So we went into the CV station and we negotiated this. You allow us to go on the morning show, radio, put commercials all across TV constantly. Hush is the best thing ever. Hush 2 coming out, being there in cinemas. Locals are going wild, also red carpet, you show it on TV. If you do that marketing for us at that stage, we will give you the movie free of cost 1 year later. By doing that, we created so much hype that you're doing 3 shows a day, they're all sold out in the cinema.
Yeah.
What helped her in the early days with her movies in getting the cinemas filled, and you gave the station the movie a year later. That system worked. She looked at me years later and said, Rivelino, you know that I use that in every country I go to. I give them but after, but they help us with that, building that hype and everything, so we get the cinema around when the movie has just come out. If we can create these situations across the region, where we negotiate this across the region, someone making a film has an automatic entry into all of these TV stations, all of these cinema networks, and we do not have to, every time we go and sit down with someone and try to negotiate from scratch, because that cinema owner is going to try and get the best deal for himself and try and squeeze you as much as possible.
Yeah.
And the whole, what's happened with us, just like Marcia's phenomenon, is because there was no cinema happening, we were forced to screen our films independently. And so we had the entire box office for ourselves. And we were seating 700 people in one go. at 2, 4, 6, 8, and
because we would do on weekends, we would do 4 screenings. At 2 o'clock, a 4 o'clock, a 6 o'clock, and an 8 o'clock.
You see, and that's good. That's the system we need, because someone coming up in a filmmaker might not be able to do that, but you have the infrastructure and know how to do it. You help them in Antigua. That's what we want. We need a group of partners working across the region to create a system that when I have my movie and it comes out, I have that assistance in the other territory and they earn a percentage on their side. So I'm not having to do this, or I'm not having to travel. The person does log in via Zoom and you talk to the filmmaker when it's done. But there's that mechanism to make revenue. My philosophy all these years and when I'm working is, this is a business. I have to make revenue from it. I have to look at ways that revenue can be created. I do not want people to come. You know, you ask people, a lot of people come and help me, whatever else, but you want to give them something. You don't want it to continue that way. It cannot continue that way. So we have to create mechanisms.
Yeah, and the other thing that happened is we were able to get someone to do concessions, you know, sell the popcorn and right, and we got a cut of that because we were giving him an exclusive venue.
Yeah.
Right, and so like I said, you have to be creative on every level, right, and you have to find ways to make what you're doing sustainable. Otherwise, you make a film this year, but you'll never be able to make another one. You know, you'll be in so much debt and so much expense that you won't be able to continue it. And we've seen that with other filmmakers.
What I've been trying to discuss locally is the trying to create a film fund, so that even if you need to borrow money for that production, you borrow it, and it's a revolving fund. So when you do the cinema rundown, the money comes back and you put it back into the fund. So it constantly revolves to the next filmmaker. We need mechanisms like that.
Yes, and that's something we've been trying to preach here through our Ministry of Culture.
Yes.
To have a fund like that available, especially to young filmmakers.
Yes.
So, and all they have to do is present themselves professionally, you know, have all their information, have everything in black and white. And once it looks like a viable project, they get seed money.
Very good. But one thing you have to put in there, you cannot have these government workers evaluating it. You have to put a film professional, a group of film professionals managing the process to look at those applications. A government person will look at that and think it's the best thing ever or the worst thing ever, and they're totally the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, this is absolutely fascinating conversation. And I actually wanted to talk because, you know, I think that the context in Simmonston as well is definitely different to Barbados and Antigua, where I think both of your countries have film commissions. So I think, you know,
we have a film
commissioner. Okay.
We have a film commissioner.
Yeah.
Commission.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's definitely.
Is there a film commission in Barbados?
There's a film commissioner.
Okay. Say no more.
She organized everything.
Okay. Yeah. And the interest, as we said earlier, with that, it's looking at what can come in from outside. It's not about the development, indigenous development.
Right, absolutely. Because I think, you know, I mean, just thinking of context, because there are differences between the islands throughout the region in terms of, you know, like we say, because of the separation between the islands, there's a lot of kind of different, the rate of growth between the different nations is different in this. So, I mean, in the case of St. Vincent, really where we're at right now is really like pushing that educational side of things, like really trying to communicate to the audience the value of these films, you know. So part of what the festival initiative is doing is normalizing this idea of film, normalizing the idea of consuming local content. And I think just turning that switch on for people to be like, Vincentians make films, and in fact, they're valuable and they're important, they're preserving heritage, you know, and they hold a lot of keys to our identity, to self-authoring our identity, rather than looking towards these outside models. But like what we're saying is that we're at a very kind of nascent time awareness in St. Vincent. So I know we've discussed, you know, a lot of these ideas of like what models can serve us better, which maybe we'll return to in more specifics. But for right now, you know, say I'm a filmmaker, I have a film that I've made. What are my options now to think creatively about how to make money from my film now?
Exactly what we're talking about. I mean, the example there in Antigua where they did their own, just a projector screen you need. You make a product, you try not to make it too complex. It's your first project. I remember Marcia Wheat, she shot her first hatch in 3 days. She had limited locations, not like 20 and 30 and looking for ridiculous things. You keep it as simple as possible and you grow from there. Your next film, your production is going to be better, but you grow from a point.
What was very lucrative for us also was the DVD market. Right? That is not so much a thing anymore, but even now people still ask for DVDs. But the DVD market was very, very strong. And what was really great about that was when we would go to like North America and have a screening, we would sell a ticket for $20 and sell a DVD for $20. And in most cases, they did both. They bought the ticket and bought the DVD. I remember at one screening, people actually mad at us because we went there and we took a few DVDs. And we weren't really expecting a lot of sales. And in like 5 minutes, all that we had went.
Yeah.
And people were like,
where's the rest?
Where's the rest?
So it's also about for the new filmmaker being prepared.
Yeah.
Don't underestimate your work. It will resonate, and be prepared to screen it often. Be prepared to meet the demands of your newfound audience. And I will tell you, we were overwhelmed. I remember we had a website for The Sweetest Mango. And by the time we got to the movie number 2 and movie number 3, we realized, no, we just need a website for ourselves and not for each film, because we can't afford to have a website for each film. This is not Hollywood, you know. And people will say to us, well, you need a website on our movie that's coming out, Deep Blue. You need a website. I said, no, we will have one place where you will go and you will get that information. We have to create our own models. So that young filmmaker screen independently, screen within the communities, you know. And I know I was a part of a Commonwealth facilitator for a Commonwealth session where there was this one young man who built up a fan base just by having a YouTube channel where he would put up his films for everybody to see and critique, and he would get feedback. Some will love it to death. Some people would not like it and say why. And for him, that was him learning how to make a film for his audience. And I thought that was brilliant. You know, I mean, you have to have a thick skin for that because, you know, in this new environment, people can be cruel online. But he did do that. And he said that that informed him for his future work when he decided to make a feature.
Amazing. I think it's challenging, isn't it? Because like on the one hand, you know, thinking about what the audience will respond to, but as well wanting to maintain your creative vision. So finding that balance, or even not losing the desire to maybe take certain creative risks, or to, you know, you because finding that balance can be, I think, quite tricky to people, because so that they don't, you know, kind of go in the direction of totally being like, all right, I'm gonna just copy like a Hollywood blockbuster format. And so I think things like these conversations and festivals in the region and stuff like that is, you know, can support people in feeling that confidence to still maintain that Caribbean sort of identity, that authenticity.
I think it starts with being knowing your audience, knowing who you're making the film for, because when you talk about copying, they're thinking of what they have seen, and their stories are not coming from an authentic place. The more authentic and the more local your film is, it's a cliche, but the more global it is, because we as human beings, we share a lot of similar experiences. And within that, that's where you will find your market. It will always resonate once it's coming from a place of authenticity. And we love, part of the reason why I love foreign films is because I get to travel and learn about a culture, from what they're eating to how they're dressed, you know? And I think we have to own who we are as Caribbean people and not try to copy. And most of the time, when you're getting heavy criticism, Caribbean films are receiving heavy criticism, it's because the audience is smart enough to know that you're trying to be something other, you know, really. And they see that, and you can't measure up. You don't have the money to measure up. So be yourself, you know? It's when they see you trying to be something else that you get the hardest knocks. Well, I found, you know? So I really do believe that there's place for authenticity and your own voice as a new filmmaker. You have something to say.
Yeah.
Just say it. Go with it.
Just say it. Yeah.
I think you have to be clear about what kind of film you're making. Like you can be making like what I call pure art, right? Where you're not concerned with sales. You know, it's just you expressing yourself through film, right? Or you could be trying to make something that you want to do, that you want to do well commercially, right? And for me, I approach it where I'm kind of straddling both. So I know I'm trying to express myself cinematically, but I also want this thing to do well financially. I want it to do well commercially. And so I have to understand the audience that I'm making this film for. I have to know who I'm making the film for and understand what kind of stories they like and kind of, you know, balance the two, right? So I'm not just going to look at the most popular Hollywood film in the genre that I'm looking at and just copy that, right? I'm telling the story from within me, but also paying attention to what I know audiences will respond to, right? And one of the ways I actually learn to do that better and better is I sit in the audience when the film is showing and I watch the audience. I watch them watching the film, right? And because I say all the time, I know what response I was looking for with a particular scene, for instance. I know that I wanted the audience to laugh. I know I wanted the audience to cry or whatever. And if I'm in the audience and I don't feel that energy, I know something about that scene did not work. Right? And sometimes it works with a particular audience, like it may work with an older audience, but not a younger audience. And you have to figure out why is that, right? I noticed that a scene with someone crying, for instance, in North America, the audience gets really emotional. In the Caribbean, audiences laugh.
They're uncomfortable. We are uncomfortable. There's
things so you learn so much about
culturally we're uncomfortable with.
Right. So you learn
it's fascinating.
Cultures and stuff like that. And because we're usually at the screening of our literally almost every screening of our films, we actually get to observe and see a lot of that. So when I'm editing, I take all of that information.
All of that information. Yeah. We
We
actually had a panel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. We had a panel a few days ago with the Rivelino Film Festival about film festivals, and they were talking about like somebody asked a question like, how do you find the audience for your film? How do you know what audience, you know? And they were like, make sure, you know, one of them had said, you know, there's a lot of filmmakers, they show their film and then they leave while the film is shown because they've seen it however many times, and they were like, but each audience is actually different, and there's so much information that you can get from each audience screening. Even if you say, I know a lot of filmmakers will do this before the film is, you know, made public, before it's properly distributed, whatever, they'll have a little informal screening with friends, family, you know, whatever, have a little feedback card, whatever, and that kind of stuff, because we never know, you know, we have the vision, but it's creating is a constant process of constant conversation, a constant discovery. So I think another important lesson is don't get dissuaded. It's you know, for younger filmmakers and stuff coming up and stuff, don't get dissuaded if you're not getting that response that you think. It's just a matter of navigating, negotiating, learning
process.
I see there's a question about support and nurturing emerging talent. What we have done, we have an internship program for film students who are interested in filmmaking. Sometimes they're interested in filmmaking because they look at the finished product and it looks very glamorous and so on. But we make them roll up their sleeves and be a part of the 18-hour days and some sleepless nights. And so we really get to see what they're made of in that environment. And we have been fortunate to collaborate with a couple of universities in the United States who have brought their film students to work on our projects and be part of the crew. And we pair them up with Antiguan young people from Antigua who are also interested in filmmaking. And that's how we have been able to nurture the internship programs. We participate with here in Antigua with the youth department every Easter up until COVID. There was a youth sponsored by UNICEF, where we taught young people between the ages of 13, well, as young as 12 to 18 about filmmaking, how to television production, how to use the camera, tell a story, how to put a budget together, all the different people that you have to pay, including paying for the rights to music. We would introduce all of that to them, because interestingly enough, when we had conducted a master class on feature filmmaking on a shoestring budget at Ithaca College, one of the questions that all these filmmakers asked was, how much did you pay for those locations? Because we have, our island is our location, you know? And I know, Rev, one day that will change with a structure in place, but you know, but we do have the most fabulous backdrop, which is why everybody comes here to do film productions, you know. So we introduce that whole aspect of it, that you know, you have to be mindful of where you shoot, how you shoot, getting permission to use certain places and so on. And so we nurture that here. And I mean, it has been a while. We've had young people who've gone off, studied film, doing well, have won awards, but we do not, and people get upset with me when I say this, we do not have a film industry in Antigua. We have people making movies. And industry means you have the structure in place to do everything, and we don't. And as we grow and develop, we have to reach beyond our shores for technical support, for professional actors, for all of that as we grow. But what we do, going back to the question of nurturing, is to continue to keep on our crew and by our side young people who are interested in film and television production.
Amazing. Have you had anything to add to that?
No, I'm totally behind. I like the approach it and different things. In Barbados, with the Barbados Film and Video Association, what I've been doing is trying to get people into the association, and we're doing pitching sessions with the local TV station, and then I'm going to get we're getting the TV station marketing department to work along with the filmmakers so that they can try and create some revenue that the TV station can get some, and the filmmaker gets some, and make the project viable from day one, from when they're developing it. What I don't like is a lot of filmmakers, they produce something and then wonder, what am I going to do with this? No, it has to be there from the beginning and from the planning. So that's what I'm, you know, started this pitching session. I'm mentoring people and how to approach right up their synopsis and everything else. And we're taking it to, you know, our approach is being, you know, slightly different on.
I see that question, the extent to which we think cinemas still have a place in distribution. I believe here in Antigua and Barbuda, it's a great place to launch your films. Everybody wants to see things on the big screen, but however, I do believe you can go online. You can have your independent screenings. The cinemas, I think even now in Hollywood, they're doing Avatar. The next Avatar is about to come out. And they're now looking at using the cinema only for the movies that are literally made for the big screen, where you want to have that big screen experience. And the director is saying already, the only place you're going to see my movie is on the big screen. You're not going to see it on Netflix. You're not going to see it anywhere else because I made it to be shown a particular way. So cinemas still have a place, but the model is changing for them as well. You know, what role do they play? And I believe within our small communities where things are slow to turn over, it is still a great place for people to come together as a community and screen things, but it's not the only place. It's not the place, you know, and eventually they will go the way of the dinosaur.
Yeah, I mean, I've approached the cinema here a few times about collaborating with the festival and stuff. And I think, well, of course, you know, just to rent the space, it's very, very expensive, you know, and so that automatically, if you're a first-time filmmaker or something, you know, you're even just an independent filmmaker, it's not going to be viable to be able to host like a premiere in one of these spaces. In fact, you might be able to take that money and funnel into doing something else that might create some reach. And you know, I understand that the cinema as well, they're trying to keep afloat, like, you know, they've got their bottom line to look out for. So just in St. Vincent, I know that's one of the kind of you know, challenges with getting movies.
Part of the issue with the cinemas is the cinemas in a lot of cases are subsidized by the Hollywood studios. And so they actually see us as competition.
Yeah.
So they're a little careful about supporting us.
Of course.
Too much.
Of course.
Right? And so you don't usually get a lot of support from the cinemas unless.
Yeah.
In our case, we had a very good arrangement with the local cinema. We always had a 50-50 split with the cinema, which we thought was a fair exchange.
You're lucky. I know people get 70-30.
No, we were told that. We were told
when we were in Barbados, we were told that their eyes popped open when we said it was 50. They were stunned. But you know, it's a smaller environment. You know, we have a population of 100,000. You know, we have the uniqueness of our size works for us. You know, yeah, no, truly. You know, so that has.
But we always had a very good.
Yeah.
Either that or you're good negotiators.
Well, I think part of what happened too, I think because of the huge success of that first film, The Sweetest Mango,
where we were doing it independently.
Yeah, they were very keen on getting a part of
that action.
Yeah, you got it. Great strategy.
Yeah.
Keep them out first.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if the first film we went to them with was something that didn't do very well, then they'd probably be doing the same thing, well,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
for me to do this, you'd have to rent the space and basically take all the risk.
Yes.
Right. But we always had a very good relationship with the local cinema.
Amazing. And just as we're coming to the end of our time together, I just wanted to discuss a little bit, like, I guess just to hear from you guys what, you know, if there's sort of one main takeaway, one major lesson that you've learned throughout your careers, what might that be?
I think one takeaway, I know that marketing is very, very important. Right? And we start the marketing from the time we're shooting. Right? We're selling the actors, we're selling the story, And when we release the film, we're putting up like huge 20 by 10 billboards, 20 foot by 10 foot billboards. We really do go all out with the marketing, right? So our idea is that everyone in the country must know that this film exists. Whether you actually come to see it or not is another story. But we shouldn't meet someone there saying, "Oh, I didn't know you had a movie out." Right? Like, we make sure that we saturate the market with advertising, and we have to be creative to do that because we don't have
a lot of money.
We don't have a lot of money,
Right?
And so we find different ways to do that. So we have partnerships with the local bank. We have partnerships with different people to make that happen. Right? We trade services with different companies. We do all sorts of things, but the marketing is a big part of what we do. Right?
Yeah, for me, the takeaway as a producer, no matter what Howard writes and all the things he puts in the screenplay, right? I want to make sure that financially it is feasible and that the budget is well within our means, and that most importantly, we can make it back at home so that everything else outside of Antigua is gravy. So that has been our thing. So when you start to make your movie, look at your budget. And if you say you're going to screen it 10 times, how much money will you make if you screen it 10 times? And consider that your budget. And then, so I think just really look at what you're writing, if you're a screenwriter, and figure out how you're going to make it financially viable so that you can make your money back at home. We're not going to make a multi-million-dollar movie and then ask Antiguans and Barbudans to give us that multi-million-dollar back. We're not going to do that. And there is bartering for things. There are things that add value that you don't necessarily have to pay for. So for me as a producer, I look at ways in which we can do something of quality within our small budget, within an environment in which we know we will make it back. We will not make it back in one screening, but we're confident that it can have a long, successful run right here on our home turf, so that when we step out of this environment, we're okay. We're now just doing marketing for the next film. We start, they say, oh, you've done one. The other one is coming with the support and with the finances from the one that we just did.
Yeah, I think another point I would like to make has to do with, when I speak to a lot of Caribbean filmmakers, the conversation is usually around cameras.
Gear heads.
Right? Are you red? Are you using?
I use.
And very rarely.
Story.
Yeah. There you go.
Very rarely does anyone approach me and say, so what's your process in writing this script?
Story.
How do you structure the story?
Oh, why are you telling that story?
Very little about story. It's always about, using
what camera,
alpha this and although film is a technical medium, the story is really what matters.
Yes.
And these days, most cameras are so good.
That's so good.
You basically make a film with a
cell phone, with an iPhone 13. Yeah.
You can make a high quality, and I've seen them.
Yeah.
A high quality film with your phone. Right.
Yeah.
Once you understand how to use it. Right. So to me, it's really less about gear and more about story.
I agree.
Yes, and
and editing, how to cut films together. Right. I think there just needs to be more focus on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, because young filmmakers, they think about so many tools around today. This is one time you're able to get your hand.
No, I remember the first time I inquired. I think it was like early 90s, and I went to New York and I was inquiring about the cost of equipment. It was like $250,000
Thank you.
US.
Thank you.
For a basic, for what I have in a laptop today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. For all the features and stuff that I have in a laptop today, I would have had to spend $250,000 US.
Yes. So you have no excuse why not to make your film these days. None. You should be producing. You should be producing nonstop. The Barbados Film and Video Association have a mobile film competition right now.
Excellent.
You have to encourage people making films with whatever they have. You get microphones, you get whatever else, and once they start making, it's gonna grow from there. If we're just sitting down and saying we have a story we're sitting down with, and it takes me $1 to make this, we'll never get anywhere.
And the more we make, the better we'll get.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think people need to remember that Hollywood is over 100 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So what they have now, 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It's something that we're building, right? And we're also kind of finding our own voice, figuring out who we are as a people and what's our style, what's our Caribbean cinematic style. Those are all things that are being developed right now.
What may be good is if, I was reading what Faith was saying about the Regional Film Commissioner thing, but maybe as if we put together a group of people who have looked at this and done it in different, all work together in pulling this off. I used to have his own distribution company in the US, used to work with CBS, and there's a ton of people in the network we have. Right now, I have a distribution system that we're working with the African Union of Broadcasters across, not across Nigeria, across the whole of Africa. We've put in these decoders. We created I have this business partner, technical genius. He created this box to eliminate satellite out of the equation. So what it does is you put this IP box down and it's, for those technical people, SDI coming out of it. And it does an H.265 signal. So we can send any live show across it with 1 second latency to anywhere. And we've developed a system that you can put different commercials. So for example, you're doing a live show. The problem is when you're doing a live show and you're doing Olympics and you're showing your commercial, everyone sees the same commercial. Within this system, I can show different commercials in different territories during the same feed going out to the box. So we hooked with a UK company who started to put them across Africa. We then got a TV station across Africa, and we had the rights for the AFCON, African Nations Cup in January. We're about to get some other huge rights, I can't really talk about it right now, across Africa. But it gives us a network across TV stations in Africa that now we can come out to the Caribbean, whatever live content or whatever else. We have to take advantage of opportunities we have and look at these new methods of distribution. Because before, satellite time was 1,000 US an hour.
Yeah.
We can afford it. No, IP, different ball game. We have to take advantage of different things out there right now to move us forward.
I don't think distribution is really an issue. I think what's an issue is we still have to market the product. Even with social media. And
yes, still on market.
The whole marketing thing is really the hurdle that you have to surmount, right? Because you can get your product to just about anyone anywhere in the world instantly.
Yeah.
Right, but to monetize that and make sure that you're actually making money from it, you need to reach a lot of people, and all of those people have to know that this film exists.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we're at the end of our time, but I just wanted to thank you again. This was absolutely fascinating. I learned so much, and I'm sure that everybody who's tuned in was as well. And I hope to keep this conversation going.
Yes.
This would grow work. So thank you.
Happy to know Rev as well. So he and I will be connecting.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's what it's all about. I'm sure you'll both be hearing from me as well at some stage.
All right.
Thank you very much
Thank
again.
you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right,
Bye.
take care.